In this presentation, we're going to be looking at how the art world works. And the art world is made up of a lot of different players taking on a lot of different roles. And we're going to be looking at who some of these people are and what they do. And hopefully that's going to help you understand how you can weasel your way into the art world and also how you can just be an artist, right? And how you can maintain a studio practice as a working artist. So we're going to just look at all these different artists one by one and the roles that they have and how they all fit together in this giant puzzle, which is the art world. So we're going to start off with the big shot artist represented by a fancy gallery. And here we have Tracy Emin in her studio in 1996, and it looks very art studio-ishy. There's, various mixtures on the ground with color in them, and unfinished paintings and drawings on the floor, and some socks and things hanging from the ceiling. It's everything we can imagine an artist studio being. But this is the place, this is ground zero for the production of work. So start thinking about your studio as a place where you're making inventory for a business, basically. And here's Tracy in her studio, and she's actually producing things which are sellable. We think of her being off in her own world, making her drawings, only trying to please herself. But at the same time, she's also creating these objects which become worth a lot of money. And a lot of different players in the art world take these objects and they all want to make money off of her as well. Now, in order to become a big shot artist, a lot of people will get a lot of fame really, really quickly, and that can be really bad for artists because you want to build these things slowly and maintain your price point on your paintings or your works of art. These types of artists have been selling for a long time, and they're well established, and people know how much their work is worth. And a lot of times this seems like a really arbitrary thing to people not too familiar with the art world, but these artists consistently sell at a certain price point for years and years and years and years and years. And not only are they selling their new work, their old work is going on to something called the secondary market. That is art which has already been sold, which is then resold again. And this gives us a price point that Tracy Emin's drawings are worth about this, right? And for this reason, they're often referred to as blue chip artists. And blue chip refers to a type of stock like Microsoft or Facebook, whatever. Um, these types of big, very dependable stocks that you can buy. Like Microsoft is probably not going to go out of business anytime soon, so you can invest your money in Microsoft, and it's probably going to just slowly accrue interest over the years. The same is true with these types of artists. They're considered blue chip artists because their work just kind of keeps going up and up and up in value. Every year that gets worth a little bit more, there's a little bit less of it. There's more of a fear that they're going to die, and then it's all going to spike, right? So know that the price of work takes years to build. And one thing that artists really dread is, let's say you start off and you're selling a painting for $10,000 and you sold two of those $10,000 paintings. And then all of a sudden, years and years and years go by and you don't sell anything else. And those two people that bought those $10,000 paintings are like, I don't know about this Jeremiah Polachek painting anymore. I think I'm just going to get rid of it while I can. And they sell it for $4,000. All of a sudden, my value as an artist drops because this other person resold my work at a lower price. So that's part of the role of what a gallery does. Here we can see Barbara Gladstone and the big shot gallerista, right? So this is a person who started a gallery, and typically they have some money backing them because in order to get a nice place to rent in New York City, you're going to have to spend a lot of money, or London, or Paris, or Brussels, or any of these major art cities throughout the planet. Now, what does a gallery actually do? When we think about what galleries do, a gallery is protecting an artist's market. Now, what do we mean by that? Remember when I said you were selling to a collector before, and he bought a painting for $10,000, and then they resold it for $4,000. A gallery makes sure that your work all doesn't go to one person, because that means that one person is kind of in control of the value of your work. So a gallery is a middle person between the artist and the collector, more or less. And they kind of make sure that certain people can't get too many of one painting. Some galleries won't even sell to certain people, right? Because they don't want them to be able to be in control of these artists' worth. And maybe they have 5 of their paintings, so they don't want this other person to get a hold of one. So a gallery protects an artist's market. These people also deal with big estates. So, for instance, the Gladstone Gallery, they deal with the estates of Keith Haring and Robert Mapplethorpe and all these other major artists from throughout the years. So it's easy to think, what is a gallery doing? They're taking 50%. What do? They just put, they just own a space. They're actually doing more than just putting artwork up on the wall. They're protecting an artist's market and controlling the value of a lot of the things that they create. Now, I decided to include this role as well, which is like a working artist. And there's a lot more working artists. I've met a lot over the years who are able to produce work at a rate that keeps them stable and gives them a stable source of income. Now, these types of people may also often, do presentations, do visiting artist lectures, be residents at museums, all sort of things like this. This is Hollis Dunlap, who went to school with at the Lime Academy of Arts. But he sells his paintings for a lot of money, and he has a pretty big following. And I imagine, I haven't got into his finances, nor do I want to act like I know them, but I imagine with the price point of his paintings and the amount I see selling, he's able to maintain a pretty solid source of income from painting alone. So he's producing work. He's not Tracy Emin selling, works for millions of dollars, but he's able to produce work consistently and sell it consistently. And that, combined with doing visiting artist stuff and teaching classes and all this sort of stuff, gives him an ability to paint. Another good thing about teaching is that you can teach a class and you only have to work a couple days a week. You have to prepare and all this sort of stuff, of course, but it gives you a lot more leeway than if you're an accountant and you have to be at your work at 8 o'clock and leave at 5 o'clock in the evening. So there's also a reason why a lot of artists are bartenders and waitresses. It's like a joke, I know, but you can get your shifts covered and it's a little bit more flexible than a lot of other jobs as well, and you can make a bunch of money on tips. This is one of the galleries in Denver that actually represents Hollis, or sells some of his work at least. And this is like a mid-sized gallery, I would call it. And these aren't the big hotshot galleries like the Gladstone Gallery that have been around for years and are, extremely prestigious. But there's a lot of smaller, mid-sized galleries that are doing a really good job as well. And so the main question with a lot of these galleries is, do they go to art fairs? That's what everybody kind of wants to know. If you're going to be represented by a gallery, you want to know, do they go to art fairs? And the reason why you want to know, do they go to art fairs, is because that gives your work tremendous amounts of exposure, and it gives you access to a lot of collectors and a lot of eyeballs on your work. If they're just representing you and just keeping your work in their gallery, it's a lot less likely to be selling than if they're taking it to art fairs. And a good thing to think about art fairs is, when I was growing up, we would have like the art and craft fair, where you'd get like a piece of bark, with a mountain scene painted on the back or something like that. And those are kind of these arts and craft fairs. But there's also these big art fairs like Art Basel that are more prestigious, and they're very expensive to actually participate in. They can be, $20, $30, $40,000 to just be able to run a booth at one of these art fairs. So you can see how much money they have to make back in order to participate in these things, in order for them to be a good investment to them. I decided to put this in there because I think it's a fairly new category, and I just called it the Lone Wolf. And this is a Nicholas Uribe self-portrait here. And Nicholas Uribe is a really interesting artist, and his approach to business, I think, has been really interesting as well. If you have a chance, go over and check out his channel, called Our Painted Lives. It's honestly, I think it's the best videos ever made on painting, and he gives them all away for free on YouTube. They're amazing. He does one a day. It's crazy. But I'm calling him the lone wolf, and these are artists that have created large followings online, and they've just bypassed the gallery system altogether. And one thing about them is to think that it's really tough to say, because the other things I was saying was, the gallery protects an artist's worth and all this sort of stuff. We don't know where the world is headed, and certainly now with everything going virtual, it seems like this mode might become more and more prevalent, where artists are selling directly to collectors on the internet. Nicholas Uribe took a really interesting approach that I think for 2 years, he's making a video every day and a painting every day, and he's making every single one of his paintings available for $250. Whereas previously, his paintings were selling for tens of thousands of dollars, the larger ones, of course. But you can now get a small Nicholas Uribe painting for $250, which makes it a really affordable thing. But then when we look at it from that, if he's selling one every single day, which I believe he is selling one every single day, because I know people that have tried to buy one and they were unable to. But that turns into what, $1,500 a week, all of a sudden, $6,000 a month. So all of a sudden, that's pretty good money, 72 grand a year, right? So just from doing this, using social media, creating your own avenues, there is a new category, which I'll call the lone wolf, where it's one person simply using the internet, bypassing a lot of these different avenues, which you would always have to before. That's why they were called gatekeepers. So here I have here's Kate Mathis, who's the founder of Young Space, and I call this the IRL online hybrid gallery online platform thingy. And basically, this kind of feeds into what Nicholas Uribe is doing as well, though, because Young Space just started out as a blog, essentially. And then when Instagram came along, they started putting up a lot of images on Instagram. They started building a large following on Instagram. And from that, they started thinking, oh, well, we can use all this, hype we're getting on Instagram and actually start having shows with these people that are really popular as well. So they started doing real life shows. They don't necessarily have one space, so they're collaborating with different artist spaces all over the world internationally, and they're also doing interviews with everybody. So their interviews are available on the website as well. So you just go to Young Space, check it out, go to the artist archive on that site, and you're going to see a ton of different artist interviews, which is just a tremendous amount of knowledge from all these different artists, and some real down-to-earth questions about what they're interested in and how they got started and how they keep going and all of that. Then we have what I call art curators and consultants for businesses. So there are these companies, this is called 9dot, and these are essentially hired curators by businesses that have a certain brand and they want to have art on their wall, but they kind of want it to go along with the vision of their business. So these types of people work with businesses and corporations and this sort of stuff, but they also have a lot of access to different artists. And commonly, they will have a large database of different PDFs from a lot of different artists. The PDF is an important thing to make. It's just a bunch of available works that you have. Take nice photos, put the dimensions on them, put the medium on them, how much it is, and they can have all these different artists to choose from, and essentially they're helping businesses to look at a lot of different art for their spaces. And these can be quite good because they buy a lot of art at once. Commonly, they'll buy more than one piece at once. Then we have the curator, and the curator has a lot of different roles, typically in museums and galleries, and they're responsible for installing, cataloging, managing, presenting, displaying everything, getting it up on the wall, make sure it looks right, but make sure it's the right height, the invitations for the show, the catalog for the show, who's the smart person who's going to write an essay about the show. All these things are up to the curator at the end of the day. Then we have the collector. I've got a couple different collector options because I think there's a couple different types of collectors as well. So we'll start off with the collector who's also a gallerist. And this is Alan Stone, and he was a gallerist, and he collected a lot of different art, a lot of African wooden sculptures, but he was also really, what's the word? He was really instrumental in Wayne Thiebaud becoming famous as well. He was the first art gallerist in New York City to represent Thiebaud and Thiebaud's cupcake paintings and all those sort of things, which became very famous. So he had a really wide gamut. He had a lot of abstract expressionist paintings as well. He collected a lot of different stuff. And if you can find it, just type into YouTube or wherever and look for the documentary Alan Stone, the Collector, and you'll find the documentary about him. It came out in 2006, and in that documentary he says that selling art was something he was addicted to doing. He absolutely loved art, but he also loved the game of buying and selling art. So you have to think, when these types of people who both love art and also love the business of art, and they see a young artist who hasn't sold anything yet, they want to get that artist and they want to make sure that artist is with them. And when they sell that artist's work, it's a validation to them. I'm doing the right thing. I'm buying the right work, right? So this is a certain type of collector who's also a gallerist as well. So they kind of overlap between those two. Then there's the collector who's a art-loving rich person. So Cheech Marin, who everybody knows from Cheech and Chong, of course, actually has one of the largest collections of Chicano art in the world. And this is somebody who, accrued some sort of wealth. He got it from acting and his films, but, it could be a lawyer, it could be a doctor, or whatever. And they have a specific vision for a certain type of art that they really, really like, and they start collecting a lot of it, and they get more of it, and they get more of it, and then they start selling a couple pieces, and that allows them to buy even more stuff, and they create a collection of art. And there's somebody who really loves art and is really invested in art just because they love looking at it, they love being around it, they love having it in their homes. But because of that, they get to have a lot of stuff. It's one reason why rich people always stay rich. Their stuff appreciates. It doesn't depreciate like an old Ford Taurus or something, right? So then there's a collector who is seeking status. Of course, we can never know who loves art and who doesn't. But Roman Abramovich bought this triptych, 3 different views of Lucian Freud, painted by Francis Bacon, and it's one of the most expensive paintings ever sold. He paid like $142 million for it. And there are certain collectors out there who want to raise their status in the community by buying art, because art is seen as the ultimate luxury item. We don't know, was Abramovich really into Francis Bacon? Who knows, But owning this triptych certainly puts him on the map as an art collector. Then we have the investor, and again, we can't tell if this is just people who want to raise their status as well. But there are collectors who simply view art as a good investment. So Jeff Bezos, for instance, would spend about $70 million a year on art. So you think about people that just buy art, and it's simply a good investment. You buy it, you wait 5-10 years, you resell it, you make money. Then there's people called art consultants. Here's Taimur Gran. And these are people who connect artists with collectors. He does have a gallery now, but most often, art consultants won't actually even have a gallery space. They'll just deal with clients one-on-one, and a lot of it's word of mouth, actually. So some person will have one painting up in their house, and they'll say, wow, that's a really awesome painting, where'd you get it? And they'll say, oh, it's this person, and I bought it from this person. And so these people are basically the conduit, the bridge between people who want to buy pretty things for their walls or different types of, sculptures or whatever, and the artists themselves as well. Of course, they take a percentage as well. Then we have the critic. Here's Jed Pearl of the New York Times. And critics basically, they write primarily about exhibitions that are currently on view. And if they have a major platform, like the New York Times, for instance, then they can, bring a lot of attention to a certain artist and kind of elevate their status. So when certain critics write about certain artists in certain magazines and certain newspapers, their work becomes worth more and more money because the right people are writing about it in the right places, and then everybody reads it, and that gives some sort of prestige to that artist. Of course, throughout all the years, due to the nature of the critic, these people generally are art historians, and they're quite different than artists in many ways that are making things. So a lot of times there'll be kind of an adversarial relationship with the critic and the artist, and because the artists generally think like, what do you know about painting? You've never held a brush in your life, right? So that's something that's been going on for years and years. So something important to think about as well. But nonetheless, critics are smart, and it's good that they write about artwork. I don't have anything against that. Then we have artist collectives. And sometimes artists who work with similar themes will form a group and basically give themselves a name. So this group, the Monster Roster, or Harry Who, or the Chicago Imagists, were a group of artists in Chicago primarily dealing with pop culture themes. And these various pop culture themes, they're different than Warhol because when you look at them, there's fantasy, there's actual passion. It's not just a Brillo box. It's not just a Campbell's soup can. They're pulling more from comic books and this sort of stuff. But there was a group of artists that were pulling from this type of imagery and in a more playful approach and creating their own artwork based upon it. And they gave themselves a name. They gave themselves a bunch of names. So the Harry Who, right? And these groups, when you form a collective, you form a network of people, and it's also interesting because that group of work all is kind of on a same theme. A really interesting one to look at that exists today is something called Stuckism. That can be fun to check out for all of you who want to Google that out. Check it out. Then we've got the graphic designers, and we forget about all this sort of part of art, but there's people that need to make catalogs, there's people that need to make invitations, there's people that need to make posters for shows, there's people that need to choose the font for the wall text, all this sort of stuff. Graphic designer. Then we've got the art restorer, and so as art falls apart over the years, then somebody needs to fix it. Sometimes they don't fix it very well, as in this case. But people have to fix stuff that's falling apart. They have to know how to fix it properly without messing it up. And then a conservator would be somebody who is in charge of an entire building or an entire group of works, for instance. So you want to make sure the building's not falling apart. So there's a really interesting intersection between what we'd associate with kind of blue collar work, like getting electrical outlets in a certain location in the gallery without disturbing some sort of ornamental wall hanging or ornamental molding, right? But they also have to have this artistic eye to them as well. So that's what a conservator does. Then there's artist assistants. Here we can see some of Jeff Koons' artist assistants. And of course, Jeff Koons doesn't make any of the art himself. He just has other people make it all for him. He plans out the ideas, he has other people draw them up, and then he has other people paint them for him as well. Everything's made by other people. So these people often create much of the work for the artist. And believe it or not, this is actually a pretty historically accurate, I guess we could call it, way of creating work. So even Albrecht Dürer and these sort of people during the Renaissance and before that as well would work in what was called workshops. So maybe Rubens' assistant would be painting some clouds, and then Rubens would come along later on in the painting and then touch stuff up and make the final touches. That's where we get the term the final touch from, that artist coming around and putting it on. Then we have artist educators, right? And so when we look at the job market for different educators, generally they're looking for somebody who they call a working artist, right? So when you look in the catalog of uh, most any university or school, you're going to see the term working artist, almost guaranteed. All of our professors are also working artists. They want people to be creating their own work, but being a professor or being an educator is actually really good in a lot of ways because you get 3 months off a year. I know not everybody does, but a lot of them do get 3 months off a year. And so they do have time to maintain their studio practice. They get sabbaticals. They often get extra funding for research and this sort of stuff. And with this, though, it's easy for educators to have education just take over your life. That's what it did to me previously. Anytime a new class was available, I was like, I'll take it, I'll take it, I'll take it. And I took every single class, and I was teaching 6 classes at one point at once. And, there's not a lot of time to really do much else besides teach and grade at that point. So I cut back drastically on that. And I teach 2 online classes and then 1 in real life class now. Well, it's online as well because I'm in lockdown at the moment. Then we have the art purchaser. Now, I just kind of made this up, but the art purchaser is a rich person is a person a rich person sends to an art fair to buy stuff. So this is usually a younger person who's got a good eye for art. They probably have some art historical knowledge. They know a little bit about the market. They know what's hot. They know who's not, and they're buying stuff. And this person just trusts them to buy the right stuff. I'm sure they call them and say, "Hey, is it okay if I buy this, Jeremiah Polachek painting?" All right. Um, but they probably would not know who I was. But anyway, a lot of times collectors also want to work anonymously. So that's something to think about as well. And, it also opens up what a lot of people think, oh, the art world is a complete scam. Yeah, it's not exactly a scam. It's a place that is ripe for abuse. We could say that. Because what is the value of that Francis Bacon triptych of Lucian Freud? What is really the value of that? Is it worth $142 million? It's worth whatever anybody wants to pay for it. Maybe now that he's paid $142 million for it, and there was all this media attention around him paying $142 million, he could put it up for auction now and it'd probably get $220 million, right? And who's to say it's not worth 220 when somebody's going to pay 220? So in addition to all these other things, there's so much other stuff. I could just keep going on and on, but I think I've hit the main ones. There's also docents, there's security guards, there's people selling tickets, there's art handlers, people putting art up on the walls, illustrators, archivists, researchers, creative producers. Those are people that have to make sculptures for other people, right? Financiers, lawyers, photographers. Somebody's got to photograph all this stuff. Fundraisers, and I'm sure that I've missed quite a bunch of stuff as well. And so I thought, since we go through all these different players, you might be feeling a little bit overwhelmed, like this seems like a totally foreign world. How could I ever possibly, weasel my way into this world? So I made 10 points, which I hope can help anybody out to give you an idea. How can you gain access to these different networks? The first and most important thing is to make work. I can't stress this enough. The main thing you need to have is a bunch of work, right? When I got represented, I had a gallery owner come into my studio, look at my work, and I'll always remember this because he said, "Oh, I think I can do something with this. I think I could do something with this." And I was thinking in my head, like, what's that even mean? I think I can do something with this. And I went out and I got some beers with him later on, and I was asking him, what's that mean? He's, "Oh, I'll take you on. I'll take you on," which basically means I'm represented by him now. So, and I asked him later on, like, what was the deciding factor for you to choose to represent me as an artist? And he was like, "Well, I really like your work, and I just like that there was so much of it," right? So make work and have a lot of work. Why do gallerists want a lot of work? They want a lot of work because they want to raise your prices over time, slowly. So if you got 80 paintings, guess what? Those 80 paintings aren't going to go on the market at the same time. 12 of them are. And then they're going to sell those, and then they're going to raise the price of the next 12. Second thing is show up. You want to just show up. You want to go to gallery openings. You want to go to visiting artists, lectures, go to all these places, go to dinners, just show up to different places and talk to people. It's as simple as that. It's similar to what else you want to do. If you want to become a professional surfer, do you sit at home and watch YouTube videos about how to surf? Or do you go into the ocean and surf and talk about surfing and hang out at the shop where they sell the surfboards and learn about the different waxes you can put on and all that stuff? You show up, you make friends with people who do that sort of stuff, right? So do the same with this. The third thing is get art-related jobs. So art handling jobs, art moving jobs, working that front reception desk game, any of that stuff. Just there's all these different jobs. Just start where you can, and you're going to learn more about the systems in place and the infrastructures in place, and you're going to be able to navigate that even better. Create your own network, number 4. So when you create your own network, you've got a network right now. If you might not think you do, but you've got a network that you can use. So in lieu of having to walk into a gallery and put your hand out and say, "Hi, I am an artist. Would you like to see my paintings?" Don't do that, right? There is a way to do that, but maybe I can have a whole video on that. But what you want to do is create your own network of people, and you do that by just showing up and making friends, talking. Number 5 is social media. And social media is really important because we have this unbelievable ability to use our phone to create a business. What is art? What is selling art? It's essentially a business. Like I said before, you want to have inventory. You want to have a certain inventory of works. And from that inventory, you just want to sell stuff. And you want to have somebody who can buy it from you. There's wholesale, right? If you're buying golf clubs or whatever, the golf club store buys them for a certain price and then they resell them for a higher price. You want to make a bunch of those golf clubs, and you want to make sure if you sell a bunch of golf clubs that you can get more golf clubs to sell, right? So you have this ability to create this entire business of buying and selling artwork all through your phone. You can take the pictures with your phone. You can write the descriptions with your phone. You can put them on Instagram with your phone. Know the absolute power and the game-changingness of social media in the art world. It goes back to the lone wolf role of the artist who creates their own following and sells to them as well. Then we've got number 6, residencies. And residencies are essentially places where artists go to meet other artists, and you live there for how long the residency is. Some of them are 1 week, some of them are 1 year. There's one in Roswell, New Mexico, where you get a house and a stipend. So they pay you to be part of the residency. There's residencies all over. Google out the big artist residency list, I think it's called, and there's a spreadsheet of all these different residencies everywhere in the world. And it's pretty fun. As soon as coronavirus goes, be ready to just travel, please. Please, I hope we can. I hope we can soon. But go to these residencies, make contacts, then you get to be in other cities, and other cities get exposed to your work as well. Maybe you're not doing well in Chattanooga, Tennessee, but in Berlin, things are going a lot better. Then we have number 7, submissions. Submit your work. I mean, I don't understand why people don't do this. Submit your work all the time. Yes, there are sometimes fees in order to do this. I think it costs like $35 to submit to New American Paintings, for instance. But getting into that magazine does help. I've been in it, and I got hundreds and hundreds of followers on Instagram, and I sold 3 paintings in one day when they put up one of my images on their Instagram. So submit, and you can't get your work out there if you don't put yourself out there. You have to submit to different places. Number 8, group shows. So group shows, get your work out there. If you can't do a solo show, find out where are there group shows happening and get your work into those group shows. Magazines, this is pretty much the same as submissions. However, magazines don't necessarily have to be art related. A lot of times people think magazines have to be just about art if they want to get their stuff in there. But there can be magazines that are just like your local city magazine, or maybe it's a travel magazine. Me, I sold more paintings. You can Google my name out and look at it. In Boing was a website around 2007, and they primarily post stuff about video games and kind of quirky news stories and this sort of stuff, as well as stuff about Electronic Freedom Foundation. Anyway, Cory Doctorow, who's one of the people who created Boing, likes my work. He actually got one of my paintings, and he posted about me 3 times on that site of his. And back then, when you were on one blog, it would just trickle all over the place to all these other blogs. So all of a sudden, I'm in Wired. All of a sudden, I'm in the Times in London, and like all this different websites all of a sudden started writing about my work. I got into NPR, and NPR did the national NPR, not even a local station, did an interview with me, right? And this came from doing number 7, which was submitting my work, right? I went and I actually wrote an email back then and submitted my work that way. But I submitted my work, and that got it out there. So magazines, they don't need to be art related. I sold like 35 paintings in probably 3 days just through that one post that I got up on Boing ages ago. And all those people buying that weren't necessarily the savvy art buyer types, right? These were people just that wanted something cool for their wall. So magazines, reach out to different magazines. They can be online magazines or blogs or whatever. And they don't have to be art related. If your work kind of fits there in some sort of way, submit it. Look for the email of the editor and just write them directly. There's nothing wrong with doing that. What do you have to lose? And the last one, of course, number 10, is get your work out there. Create your own opportunities. You're going to have to do that in this game. It's impossible not to. So if you have, right now, I just opened up a studio space here in Prague that I got a good deal on because of coronavirus is shutting down everything, right? And so I need a studio anyway. And I was like, I'm just going to get a storefront, right? I'm going to get a storefront instead, and then I can teach out of it and do this artist mentorship program that I've wanted to do for a long time. And I'm going to be getting the keys in a week, right? So create your own opportunities. Just find the space. Put your work out there any way you can. Get it in front of people's eyeballs. So in addition to, how to gain access to these networks, we also have how to work as an artist, and just some tips on how are you, what does it mean to be an artist and be part of this weird art world? What do you have to do to maintain this? So the first thing and the most important thing is to just be curious about the world. Read about what's happening in the world. Read about what's happening politically. Read about what's happening with the environment. Read about what's happening in your local town with the local river or whatever. Read books from 200 years ago. Read books from 2,000 years ago. Just be curious about the world and investigate it. And by doing so, you can expose yourself to all these different experiences that are only going to enrich your art more and more. Number 2, maintain a studio practice. So work every day. You can start with 15 minutes a day, right? You don't have to think of, it's the same thing as people always making goals, and what they say when you're making goals, don't make your goal too hard, right? So start with 15 minutes a day, go to 30 minutes a day, then go to 2 hours a day, 4 hours a day, 6 hours a day, 14 hours a day. Maintain a studio practice. Figure out, I'm going to spend this much time working on my art because this is a business and this is something that's important for me. And you have to be able to do it, just like you got to be able to make yourself go to the gym. And often, like they say with going to the gym, the hardest part is tying up the laces on your shoes. So make that studio. Make sure you have a space to paint. Make sure you have a space to plop down in. Here's my paints. You don't have to spend an hour, scraping your palette. Everything's ready to go. You got a professional studio. You can come in, sit down, and make work. And you do that every single day. And all of a sudden, you've got to practice. All of a sudden, it becomes habit. And all of a sudden, you have a big body of work. Number 3, write about your work. You want to just write. I hated writing about my work forever. I was like, it's painting. Why do I got to write something about it? People should just be able to look at it and see what it means, right? They don't have to look, they don't have to read. They should just look at the painting, right? Writing about your work ties into that number 1, to being curious about the world. Write about the ideas you're playing around with. You want to make your paintings interesting? You want people to actually think they're cool? Then write a little bit about it. Dig into the subjects that you're interested in. Number 4 is network, which goes back to just gaining access to all these different networks and how you do that. And you do it by just showing up, right? Network, talk to people. Be aware, number 5, be aware of how valuable your time is. So one thing that's really important is I know from the viewers of my channel, skews pretty young. Be aware of how valuable that is. You've got time, no matter how it is. Maybe you got 2 hours a day. Maybe you got to work all day. You just got 2 hours every day that you can paint between eating, making dinner, taking care of business and emails and kids and all this sort of stuff. But you got that time, and make sure you know how valuable that time is. If all your friends are like, hey, we're going to go out and take some Jaeger bombs tonight, just be like, no, sorry, I got to stay home and paint, because that's what's valuable. And honor that valuable time that you've got and that you've set aside for yourself. Just like going to the gym, just like anything else. Number 6, be good at your craft. Just be good at what you do. So many people make art and they think, oh, I've made this thing. Now I guess I got to take it and everyone's going to like it. No, you got to be good at what you do. So you get good by knowing the fundamentals, right? So every single art has certain fundamentals, just like you're playing scales on the piano or scales on a guitar or whatever. Know the fundamentals, get good at them, get good at your craft. Now, number 7, this is super important. Know who the other artists are in your genre. One of the exercises I have my students do is for them to identify 3 artists they'd like to show with. They have to name them. I want you to name 3 artists that you want to show with. You have to know the other people who are making stuff like you. You know how many times I've heard over the years people saying like, oh, well, nobody's really making anything like me. They are, right? The fact that you're saying that there's no lineage to your work shows that you haven't done enough research into it, right? A lot of people think they're a genius, they're creating something the first time. It's usually not true, and they usually just have not investigated their genre enough. Number 8, don't be a jerk, right? Nobody wants to work with a jerk, okay? So don't be a jerk. There's a lot of people who are arrogant, egotistical, self-centered people that think that they have some sort of special status just because they're an artist and they have this unique vision. But you know what? Maybe a lot of people just think you're a jerk. And you know what they say, like, if you keep meeting jerks all day, maybe the jerk is you. So don't be a jerk, just be nice to other people. Be somebody that other people want to work with, right? A gallery has to work with you. They got to get you to do stuff. They got to get you to pack stuff the right way. They got to get you to get stuff on time to the gallery so you're not missing your show when they say your show's going to go up. Don't be a jerk. Be a professional. Number 9, be skeptical of people trying to help you. There's a lot of dream sellers out there, right? art is a big dream for a lot of people. It's a big dream that a lot of people want to do, and a lot of people want to take advantage of that and sell them dreams, right? And usually the dream sellers are making you pay money, right? So you can pay for submissions sometimes, but just be skeptical. Look into it. Is this money valuable? Is this person that's taking my art really going to do something good with it? Or are they just going to rip me off? So be aware that there are con artists out there and people just trying to make money off your dreams. Be skeptical of them. Number 10, last one, get really good at what you want to do. No matter what it is, it goes back to knowing the other artists in your genre. Take your art, put their artwork right next to it. Be honest with yourself. Look at those two paintings. Just look at them. Which one looks better? That one's better? The artist you like is better? You got to get better. Okay? Got to get really good at what you want to do because other people can see that, right? If there's a badly painted painting and a really well painted painting, people are going to be able to tell whether they're into art or not. You know, when I go do karaoke, I think I sound pretty good, and that's pretty dangerous, you know? So get really good at what you do. Be honest with yourself. Know that what you are doing is something that a lot of other people have done for literally thousands and thousands of years. So you got to get really good at it. And you do that by just practicing every single day. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to see more videos like it, head over to painting-course.com. Become a patron over at patreon.com/paintingcourse. And for $10 a month, I will send you a hand-drawn postcard every single month. For $15 a month, I will send you a hand-painted postcard for every month. You can also hop on over to the Instagram, just Painting Course on Instagram, and you can see more paintings and tips and tricks and all that sort of thing. Until next time, goodbye.